Good afternoon, everyone. This is Cal Peterson. I am going to be doing a design for a zip bag today. It's going to have a dangle. I wonder what kind of zip bag it could be if we're doing a Pokeball dangle. So I have actually done the Pokeball dangle video on another Pokemon bag. It's the same thing, but I will cut that video part into here. So for those that didn't do the Pokemon face bags, they will have the instructions for how to do the dangle. But I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now. It's got 9 color stops. You're going to need a piece of vinyl for sure for the front. You're going to need either a thin vinyl or olifun or felt or something non-fray for the back. You're going to need an eyelet. I want to say they're 5/16 of an inch, but it will be in the PDF. And some cutaway stabilizer that you can use for it. But again, I'll go through the process of that in the video that I'm going to cut in so you can see how to do the dangle. Then we have 9 color stops, and the first color stop is going to be your placement line. And it also tells you what color vinyl Ricky recommends for the base of the dangle. So that's a placement. And then you're going to have all of these here that are all design elements. So that's going to put all the details on the bag, or on the dangle, I mean. And then this one here, it's always listed as true orange on dangles, and that is the little eyelet punch hole. So that's the eyelet hole. And then this one here is the backing and the final outline. So you're gonna, so this is the final outline. Okay, so you're gonna wanna put the back on right before that eyelet hole. So then that way it stitches through both layers. So this is, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So what are we gonna need to do this? We're going to need, as it says here, the first stop is red. So I'm gonna need a piece of red vinyl. I'm gonna do the back of mine white. You can make it whatever color you want, black, white, red, whatever. But it's just gonna be a solid color. So, you know, you can pick whatever you want. So we're gonna need 2 pieces of vinyl, one for the front, one for the back. And then I'm going to need an eyelet. And I use eyelets with washers because they set better for me. And then I will need a tool to punch the hole. I will need for the eyelet, I will need a tool to set the eyelet. Now this is what I use. You can get the ones where you pound them with a hammer for both of those options. You don't have to have these big chunky things like I do. And then I'm also gonna need a pair of scissors to cut this out. Okay, so, oh, and eventually you're gonna need a little piece of ball chain for attaching it to the actual bag. So I'm gonna put these aside for now. And then we're gonna start with our first step, which is to hoop a piece of medium weight cutaway. Yes, cutaway. Tearaway is not a good idea on things like this. Tearaway turns to pulp when it gets to dense or satin stitching, and it's not giving any support. A lot of times I've seen tearaway just give way in the middle of a stitch, and then things go bad, just bad. So this is medium weight cutaway. I'm actually going to use my 5x7 hoop, which is not usual for me, but this is one little dangle, so that's what we're going to do. All right, so I'm going to put this on my machine. I'm going to run color stop 1 for the placement, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what to do. Okay, color stop 1 has been run, and it gave us our placement stitching. So now I need to take my piece of vinyl and set it down there. Now, if you aren't fly by the seat of your pants like I usually am, then you can take a couple of pieces of tape and stick it down. Now we'll put this on the machine, and I'm going to run color stop 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to do all the details, okay? And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do the next part. Okay, stringers, I'm back and I have finished stitching the front. So what I did is I flipped the hoop over, I placed my white vinyl, I can actually redo this, Placed my white vinyl over the design and I taped it down. You have to use something to attach the back to the stabilizer because gravity is not your friend in this instance. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to roll the last 2 color stops, the eyelet hole and the final outline. Now the eyelet hole is listed as true orange. You don't have to do it that color. That's just forcing the machine, if you're using a single needle, to stop so that you can put the back on. Excuse my crazy dog for the noise in the background. So I'm going to put this back on and run those last 2 color stops, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to finish this up. I'm back and I have finished stitching the final outline and the eyelet hole. So I'm trimming up any last little tails on the front, making sure there aren't any jump stitches, which looks like there's one right there. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over and ooh, there's some thread barf in here. Okay, so I'm just going to trim all of this up to make it nice and clean on the back. Again, sorry for the noise. I live with the Meeps, the new puppy Toast, and 4 other humans if you include Mr. Voodoo Stick Mod. And a few of those other humans are getting up for work right now. So, all right, so that is all trimmed off. So now I can pull off my tape. And then I can unhoop this. And now we're going to cut it out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just use my rotary cutter to trim off a lot of the excess. It's going to make the final trimming much easier to get all that garbage out of the way. Then I'm just going to take my scissors, pick a spot, and I'm going to come in here. And the key is to turn the project, not the scissors, and take nice, good long strokes. And then come up and around the eyelet. Now this might not be perfect, and that's okay. I've never had a customer complain that my cutting isn't exactly perfect, and you know, if anybody ever did, I would just say, well, each item is hand cut, so there's bound to be some slight variations. All right, so that's all cut out. Oops, sorry for the wiggle. Now I need to, I'm just gonna cut that just a little bit better. Now I need to punch the hole. And I did it in red, so it's hard to see there. Okay. Getting that lined up. And I'm gonna punch the hole. Okay. Doesn't look like that went completely through, so we'll turn it and punch again. There we go. Okay, hole is punched. Now I'm going to put the front of the eyelet through. Flip it over. Put the washer on, and then I'm going to set it with my setter that I have. Again, you can use the ones where you whack it with a hammer. That works too. And now my eyelet is set and my dangle is all ready. So now I'm just going to set this aside and go in, stitch out my zip bag, and then when that's all done, I'll be ready to attach this to it. You can find this whole file, because the dangle will come with the zip bag file, at www.stringtheoryfabricart.com. We're going to be making a Pokemon split bag. So these are bags that are literally split down the front, middle. So they have 2 sides. You can do the front in all one color if you want, or you can do what I'm going to do and do 2 different colors. So I'm going to show you how to do that. These are very similar, almost basically identical to the horror chibi ones that are like this, but I'm going to do this video with a Pokemon one. Now, things to remember on this is you're going to need a bunch of different things here for the usual suspects of vinyl fabric. I would not recommend vinyl for the front, I would not recommend fabric for the front, because then you're going to end up with needing to fold over the fabric so it has a non-raw edge along the zipper, and then you have a split in the middle, but there's going to be a little bit sticking out above the satin so that it doesn't interfere with the zipper movement. So that would leave a little raw edge right there. So I recommend doing vinyl for that. So you're going to need a piece of vinyl for above the zipper. You're going to need some vinyl for below the zipper, either one full piece or some split pieces. Okay, I'm going to be doing 2 different colors there. You're going to need a piece for the back. You're going to need a zipper that is 2 inches wider than your bag, at least. I buy extra long zippers that can fit any bag size, 4x4 to 8x12, and I can trim them down if I am doing like a 5x7 bag or anything other than 8x12 bag. You're going to need lining, 2 pieces to line behind the front of the bag. So we're going to turn that down a 1/2 inch and press so we have a nice clean edge to put against the back of the zipper. You're going to need a piece of fabric for the back lining. You're going to need some 1 inch wide by 2 inch long pieces of ribbon to use for zipper stops. You're going to need 2 pieces of ribbon that are 5/8 by 3 for your hardware. At least 2. Actually, no, you don't need at least 2. You need 1, 2, or 3. I'm doing 2 that'll attach off the top of the bag. You can do 2 off the top, 1 off the side, or just 1 off the side. I'm doing 2 off the top. So however many ribbons you pick, you're going to need hardware, either some 5/8 D-rings or some lobster claws, okay? 5/8 to 3/4 works for that. So you're going to need that. So 1, 2, or 3, depending on 1 side attached, 2 top attaches, or all 3, however you want to do it. Let's see. That's all the actual materials you need. You're going to need some sort of cutting implement for when we get to the cutting out. You're going to need tape to hold things in place, because gravity is not your friend when you're putting stuff on the back of a hoop. I like to have a lighter on standby for singeing ribbon ends. You're going to need something to poke out corners at the end. I like to have my rotary cutter and ruler spot. I have tweezers, and I have snips somewhere in this chaos that I can use for trimming thread tails. So let's go through our color stop sheet for this particular bag. Now, this is Pikachu. I'm only doing 1 video, but there's going to be different Pokemon. You will have different number of detail work color stops, so I'm going to go through that. Your first 5 color stops through the medium turquoise are all going to be things like the overall die line, your zipper tack down, your front vinyl tack downs and applique areas, so that you, if you're doing the split, okay, so that's all going to be, we'll go over all that as the steps come. Then you're going to have a bunch of detail steps. Mine happen to be 6 through 15. Yours might be different if you're not doing Pikachu. Once you get to the color step that says medium purple, that's when we're going to go back to using whatever color thread will match whatever vinyls we use for the outside of the bag, because that's all of our remaining construction of attaching the lining, hardware placement, hardware attaching, adding the back exterior of the bag, adding the back lining of the bag, except for when you get to the very, very last one, whatever number that is for you. Mine is 22. That is a do not stitch. On zip bags from Strength Theory Fabric Art, you never stitch the last color stop, because that forces the needle and the presser foot to go out to the side instead of auto centering, because the design is over. On a single needle, this is important because that foot sits really close to everything, and you don't want it catching anything and tearing up stuff you've just finished. So last color stop on any string theory zip bag, do not stitch that. Got it? All right, so now we're gonna put our hoop on the machine and we're gonna run the first color stop. Then we'll meet back here and I'll show you what to do. Okay, we are back. I have stitched the die line. I'm going to rotate my hoop for filming purposes. So you can see we have a bunch of lines on here. Now I'm gonna flip my hoop over for starters, and I'm gonna mark some lines on the back here so that when I get to a point later, these are gonna come in handy when I have to attach my lining. Okay, so I'm just putting some lines, just extending the stitch line for this skinny box in the middle. Okay, now I'm gonna flip it back to the front, and now I need to place my zipper. I am using a number 3 zipper. You can use a number 5 zipper. If you do, you are gonna wanna make sure that your teeth are perfectly centered in this box so that you don't accidentally hit them with your sewing foot on your machine, your embroidery foot. I prefer to use a number 3, gives me plenty of room, and the die lines are just wide enough for me to fit that in, okay? Now this zipper is longer than I need it to be, so I'm just gonna hack some off of the end. I'm gonna use this to keep it from fraying just in case. And then I'm gonna place this in that die line, and I'm gonna grab some tape to stick it down. Okay, that's one side. Making sure everything is lined up. Tape on the other side. Now, just to be extra safe, if you want, you can stick a piece of tape in the center there just to hold it. Totally up to you. Now I'm gonna put this on the machine. I'm gonna run color stop 2, which is gonna tack this down. Okay, color stop 2 is finished stitching, and it's tacked down the zipper and given us a die line for our 2 separate sides if we're doing that. I've already done one side here, but what I'm gonna do is take my 1 inch by 2 inch ribbon and fold it in half, singe the end, and then stick it down so the folded edge is toward the inside of the bag and the raw edge is to the outside, and tape it down so it's about a 1/2 inch inside, 1/2 inch outside the bag. These are gonna act as zipper stops for us. Then I'm gonna get the vinyl that I wanna use for the left side of the bag. I'm gonna line it up so that it's covering all of my die lines and it's right up against the zipper teeth here. And then I'm going to tape all the sides down. Like that. And then I'm going to be right back. Okay, I'm back. I just wanted to verify that I was telling you the correct instructions here. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So this we're gonna place. Now we're gonna run color stop 3, and it's gonna tack this down. Then we'll come back. We're back and have tacked down the right side. I'm just gonna move this piece of tape here so it's out here more, just in case. I'm gonna take these 2 off. Okay, I'm gonna trim this actually I'm not. I'm gonna leave that like that because this vinyl's really thin, so that's gonna be okay. Now I'm gonna take a piece of the vinyl I'm using for the right side, and I'm gonna line that up right against the teeth, making sure that all my other lines are covered. Okay. Now I'm gonna put this back on, and I'm gonna run color stop 4, which is gonna tack this down. Yes, I did tack it in yellow because the final attachment for the top and the bottom is gonna be yellow to coordinate with the Pikachu. So I wanted my tacks to match so there wasn't multiple colors of thread there. So put this back on the machine, run color stop 4, and then come back. Okay, as you can see, color stop 5 only did the zigzag tack down for this. It did not attach this at all. So if you were looking at the video and watching it and going, she's going to do this step, but why is she putting that on now? I don't need to do that. You're totally right. You didn't have to. I'm just, I guess, one step ahead of the game on there. So now I'm going to take my applique scissors and I'm going to very carefully cut along this all the way up. Okay. I can make sure that that's nice and trimmed. I don't want to cut the stitches, but I do want to make sure I'm as close as I can get here. So sometimes that means going back an extra time, or 2, 3, or 4, just to make sure that it's all trimmed up nicely. Okay, now I'm going to put this on the machine since I already placed this. If you haven't placed this top piece of vinyl, go ahead and do that now. And then you can put this on the machine and you're going to run color stops 6 through whatever number is needed before your medium purple. Stitch everything up to the medium purple. Do not stitch the medium purple step next. Okay, just everything before that. That's going to be your Pokemon and whatever saying is next to it, as well as attaching most of the way along the top and going over and tacking this down much heavier. This will not go all the way across, and that will make sense as we get further along in the bag. Well, look how cool that looks. We are just about done. I'm just gonna clean up some thread tails. Look for any jump stitches. Alrighty. Something seems odd here. I'm going to pick this up and take a look. Yep, something went amiss here. So I'm going to go and double check to see if maybe I didn't have an issue with my bobbin running out here. And then I will be back once this is fixed. Okay, I am back and I got that fixed. I think my bobbin ran out before when it finished that and that, but it didn't pick it up until up here when it was doing this, and it alerted me. So I'm glad I got that fixed. So now we need to put the back pieces, the lining pieces on. So I need to, for starters, I need to open this up. Okay. Just so that I can move my zipper out of the way here. And then I'm going to grab my seam ripper. And I'm going to cut a little hole in the stabilizer underneath there. Now I'm going to close my zipper back up and retape all this good stuff down. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over and I want to cut out the stabilizer behind the zipper. Otherwise, we're going to have issues later. Okay, so I'm going to cut this out, and I don't want to go past these stitch lines that are for the, where it actually attached the front vinyl pieces. So you can trim a little past that zipper box, but not, you don't want to go through that stitching for the tack downs for the vinyl. Okay, so I'm going to cut all this out. And okay, and that is why earlier I drew these lines in, because now that that box is gone, those lines are no longer there. So now we're going to add the lining that will cover the lower area of the bag here. So I'm going to use those lines to make sure I'm straight, and then making sure I'm covering the side and the bottom. And then I'm going to tape those on. Okay. All right, so that's all taped on. I'm going to flip this over and just kind of rub that to make sure that that tape really adheres back there. Now I'm going to put this on the machine and I'm going to run the medium purple color stop, which for me is 16. It may be different on your PDFs. I don't have access to all of them. So make sure that it's the medium purple color. Okay, and we're going to stitch that down and then we'll come back. Okay, so that stitched that lining piece on. I'm going to clean up any thread tails. I like to do this as I go instead of waiting. All right, now I need to place this upper lining piece. So again, I'm going to use those lines to kind of see where it needs to go. Take some tape, tape those down, flip it over. Okay, press that to make sure it's staying put. Now I'm going to run the next color stop, which will be the pink, listed as pink on the color stop sheet. Stitch the pink color stop, and it stitched the upper part of the lining almost all the way across. And there is a very important reason why it does it that way. Okay, does it that way so that now we can pull these tapes off and we can open our zipper, because if we had done it all the way across, we would have had to try to shove the zipper under this ribbon, and that is a pain. So open this up, open your zipper, tape this back in place, and you can put a little piece of tape over your zipper too to make sure that it doesn't wiggle around. Now you're going to put this back in the machine and you're going to run the color stop that's listed as blue, and it's going to finish this, and then it's going to give you placement lines for your hardware. Okay, I'm back again, and we have finished stitching this. We have our placement lines for our hardware. I'm just going to flip that way because I know, actually, I'm going to change my tape because I need to put my hardware down and I don't want my zipper head interfering with the hardware. So I can pull off a lot of these pieces of tape because I don't actually need them in those areas anymore. Okay, now I'm going to get my hardware and my 5/8 ribbon, and I'm going to, once again, I am going to singe my ribbons. Okay, and then I'm going to place my hardware. Now I can place my ribbons can be a little bit shorter because of this type of machine I'm using, but make sure you give yourself enough clearance for the foot of your machine. So I would say, like for a multi-needle, I can place if I'm pulling the ribbon tight, I can place the folded edge of the ribbon right above the upper tack down for the vinyl. If I'm on a single needle, I'm going to put that where it's like more even with the zipper itself instead to give myself more clearance. So now I'm going to put this on the machine and I'm going to run the color stop that's labeled as Mimosa Yellow, and that's going to tack these hardware in place. If you wanted to put one off the side, you could. Same thing. Make sure your hardware is toward the inside of the bag and that you have enough clearance for your foot over there. So run Mimosa Yellow. Okay, I'm back and I tacked on my hardware. And yes, if you notice, I'm saying the colors. That means you're going to have to look at this page because the numbers, I have this design right now to do this video. I do not know what any other Pokemon character designs might end up having as far as the number of color stops. So you need to pay attention to the color stop sheet so that you're following along with me. So now this is all stitched. I'm going to take these tapes up. These can stay. And now I'm going to take my backing vinyl and I'm going to tape it down pretty side to pretty side. Okay. Now I'm going to put this back on the machine and I'm going to run Christmas Red. Christmas Red. That is attached. I'm going to flip everything over and I am going to start trimming tails here just so that it's a little bit cleaner on the inside. Not that anybody looks up in the upper part part of the bag here when they're open it. But I just like to make sure all this stuff is cleaned up, so then that way it's not getting stuck in zippers or anything either. Clean up this stuff here. Okay, so that's about as clean as it's going to get. Now I'm going to take my lining backing, lay that down, get some tape, tape it down. Okay. Once again, I'm rubbing on the top to kind of just make sure I'm really making sure that tape stays stuck. Now I'm gonna put this back on the machine. I'm gonna run Christmas green. Code Christmas green is this step. So we're gonna run Christmas green to attach the backing. It's gonna stitch most of the way around, leaving us a hole in the lining area for turning. Do not stitch black. Do not stitch the final color stop that is listed as black. Only Christmas green. All right, everyone, we're in the home stretch here. So this is attached to the lining. I don't need these tapes on the front, so I'm taking them off. Flip this over, clean up any schmutz there. Don't need these tapes on the back, so I can take these off. Okay, now I'm going to open my hoop because I don't need to have it hooped anymore. Put that away. Okay, so now we need to do the rest of this here. Okay, so let's see. I need a pair of scissors because I have an opening here. Now I need to make some tabs. We call these turny tabs. So I'm cutting straight in from the edge up to, but not through the stitching of that area, okay? Now I'm gonna fold this back. I'm gonna take a piece of tape that was left over from when I pulled stuff off, and I'm gonna tape that out of the way. Okay. Oops. All right, so that's all taped. Now I need to cut this out without cutting those off, okay? Now I don't like to cut my ribbons, so I'm going to do things a little bit differently, and I'm going to start by pulling that back on the front, which is why I taped that fabric out of the way for the turning tabs so I don't cut them off. And I'm going to cut that, and then I flip it back over and I pull the ribbons back the other way, and I trim this off. Okay. All right, now the turning tab, those are still there, and my turning tab is still there. Okay. Now I can either use a rotary cutter and then round my corners, or I can just take a pair of scissors and starting there, go around, leaving about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, if I use my scissors, I can round the corners as I go, but it's not a big deal. If you want to use a rotary cutter, go ahead. Just don't cut yourself. And then you can round the corners. I gotta make sure I'm pulling my tab out of the way so I don't accidentally cut my ribbon tab. All right, let me get rid of all of my trash. All right, now we need to turn this. Now, I'm just gonna kind of mush this thing up because I don't have my iron on. So I'm just gonna kind of do this to just kind of mangle things a little bit so that, not mangle, but manipulate things so they aren't quite as stiff. Now I'm gonna reach in and I wanna turn this, but I need to be gentle because I wanna turn it, but I don't wanna tear my lining if I can avoid it. This is where having an iron warmed up or using a hairdryer to warm your vinyl helps, but I'm in a bit of a time crunch and don't feel like waiting for that. So I'm just going to carefully do this the best I can. If you tear your lining, you just have to be a little more careful when you seal it up. All right, now you can just continue turning, but I like to take my lining when it's inside out like this, and I like to poke out my corners when it's this way. I find it makes, when I have to do the final turn, it turns a little bit better for me. All right. And you can use your fingers or a chopstick, something blunt. Eraser end of a pencil works too. Okay, so now I can see the tape for all of the hardware and the zipper head. So I'm just gonna open my zipper more. I'm gonna reach in there, get that tape. All right, now before I turn this though, the final time, I wanna close this up. So I need to tuck this tab in, okay? And that one's folded in already. Just wanna open my zipper up all the way so that I can then either take a needle and thread and sew it, or you can be like me and you can glue it. I'm using some glue. I don't even think that the place I got this from sells this glue anymore, which is too bad because it's really fast drying. But you can use Fabri-Tac or tacky glue, whatever. Any sort of fabric okay glue. So I just put a little bit there, and then I just kind of take the folded in bottom tab and just kind of press it down. So that's all stuck. Now it's just the final turn. So I'm going to reach in and I'm going to start turning this. Oh, this vinyl is really, it's thin, but it's stiff. Okay. So I'm just kind of reaching in here and trying to push out as much as I can into the corners, and then I can take my chopstick and push some more. There we go. Get that pushed out a little bit better there. All right, there's that, and now the upper corners. Okay, one more here. Oof. Okay. I'm going to go in here and kind of push on that quite a bit more. I'm going to zip the zipper a little bit because that helps with, definitely helps with this side. Okay. Push that in. Zip it all the way up. And then kind of rolling the vinyl. Oh, that corner is not pushed out all the way. So let me get back in here with the chopstick. And really get that pushed out. Okay, that feels better. And just kind of roll this around. And this, like I said, this vinyl is very stiff, so this is going to need some time under some heavy stuff. You can use books. You can put it, if you have a heat press, don't turn the heat press on, but just use the weight of it to push this down. And then once it's all nice and flat, then you can take a ball chain and attach your dangle to this. Okay, I'll get one now to show you how to attach it. All right. So I'm just gonna thread that through that part of the zipper, thread it through the eyelet, and attach it. maybe. Okay, apparently my fingers don't want to work today for this. There we go. Okay, so now that's attached, and then I'll just go put this in under something heavy to flatten it out. But there you go, one split front Pokemon zip bag.